Arielle had learned early that silence was safer than truth. In the great stone house perched at the edge of the pack's territory, quiet was survival. Floors were scrubbed before dawn, fires lit before anyone woke, meals prepared and cleared without acknowledgement. If she moved softly enough, spoke rarely enough, she could almost pretend she didn't exist, and most days that was exactly how they wanted it. "Girl!" The words snapped through the air like a whip. She froze, hands submerged in cold water, fingers aching from hours of work. Slowly, carefully, she turned. "Yes, Mother," she said, head bowed. Her stepmother stood in the doorway, wrapped in fine furs despite the warmth of the hearth. Power clung to her like perfume, sharp, overwhelming. Behind her, the stepsisters lingered, identical smirks painted on their faces, eyes bright with the anticipation of cruelty. "The floors upstairs haven't been done," the woman said coolly, "and tonight's announcement dinner will require fresh linens. You'll manage both." She nodded once. No hesitation, no protest. Arguing never changed the outcome. It only changed the punishment. As she returned to her work, she felt their gazes linger, measuring, dismissive. She was smaller than most Omegas, quieter too. Her scent was muted, carefully suppressed with bitter herbs and old tricks learned through years of necessity. An unnoticed Omega was a safe Omega, or so she had believed. That evening, as the family gathered around the long table, she stood against the far wall, invisible as smoke. The messenger arrived cloaked in pack colors so dark they seemed to swallow the light. The messenger arrived cloaked in the pack's colors so dark they seemed to swallow the light. He bowed first to her stepmother. "An announcement from the Alpha." The room shifted. Even the fire seemed to still. "The Alpha calls for a grand moon gathering," the messenger continued. "Attendance is required of everyone of mating age, betas, omegas, apprentices, healers, seers, every eligible member of the pack. He has chosen the full moon for this gathering, for bonds made on this night cannot be opposed by anyone, even if the bond is with an omega." A murmur rippled through the room. Her stepsisters gasped, hands flying to their throats, excitement gleaming in their eyes. "This is the only opportunity an Omega has to bond with someone of higher class," the messenger added. "If you are lucky, tonight could change your life." Her chest tightened. Her stepmother's gaze flicked toward her, sharp and calculating. Then she smiled, slow, cold. "Of course, my daughters will be honored." No one mentioned the girl pressed against the far wall. She kept her head bowed. Lucky. The word echoed in her mind. Omegas like her were rarely lucky. Survival was their lot, not fortune. She had spent her life invisible, unnoticed, and now the moon would shine on everyone except her. Still, the ache in her chest refused to quiet. Her heart stuttered. The Alpha will be there. Everyone knew his name, spoke it in hushed tones. He ruled the pack with ruthless precision, unmatched in strength, feared even among other alphas. They said he had never lost a fight, never softened, never spared mercy. They said he was incapable of love. Her stepmother's gaze flicked toward her, sharp and assessing. Then she smiled, slow, cold. Later that night, Arielle knelt by the hearth, scrubbing soot from the stones while laughter floated down the hall. Dresses were being chosen, jewelry argued over, futures dreamed aloud. She listened without envy. Wanting was dangerous. Wanting made you careless. Still, something stirred. The grand moon gathering was more than a celebration. It was destiny, they said. Bonds formed beneath a full moon were unbreakable, powerful, rare. She pressed her hand to her chest, willing the strange ache to settle. She would not attend. That much was clear. The thought hurt more than she expected, but pain was familiar. It would pass. It always did. Across the territory, far from ashes and silence, Alpha Darian stood alone on a high balcony overlooking his lands. The moon had not yet risen, but he felt it all the same. A restless pull beneath his skin. Power answered power, and tonight something was off. "You summoned the council," his beta Corvin said carefully from behind him. "Yes. You've never used the gathering for anything beyond politics." He turned slightly, massive frame casting long shadows. "That will change." The Alpha had ruled for years without a Luna. It had never been a weakness, until recently. Rivals whispered, councils pushed, packs tested boundaries. Still, it wasn't politics that unsettled him. It was the sense that someone, was coming. Something great was about to happen. He flexed his hand, jaw tightening. Bonds were myths. Omegas were responsibilities. Nothing more. Soft, breakable, irrelevant. And yet, "Make sure every eligible Omega attends," he ordered. "No exceptions." The night of the grand moon gathering arrived, bathed in silver light. Her stepmother Velara and stepsisters were a whirlwind of silk and perfume, moving through the house like royalty, their laughter echoing off the stone walls. They spoke of dances, of alphas they hoped to impress, of the power they might gain. She stood against the wall, hands clasped, heart hammering in her chest. "I cannot go. I am nothing. I am not meant for this." And yet, the messenger's words from earlier kept replaying in her mind. "If you are lucky, tonight could change your life." For the first time in years, she considered the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could be more than invisible. She retrieved the dress she had sewn and patched in secret, simple but elegant, soft fabric catching the moonlight through the window. Her hands shook slightly as she smoothed the folds over her body. A scarf around her neck that muted her Omega scent fell away, letting the faint, sweet fragrance she had kept hidden for years finally bloom. She didn't recognize herself in the mirror at first, not because the dress had transformed her, but because she finally felt seen. Not by anyone else, but by herself. The house emptied around her, leaving her alone in the quiet. She took a deep breath and slipped out through the servants' entrance, careful to avoid notice. Outside, the night was alive with the energy of the full moon. Every pack member of mating age was moving toward the gathering, the sound of hooves, paws, and whispered conversations drifting through the air. She hesitated at the edge of the forest, heart pounding. This is madness. I am too small, too weak, too insignificant. Yet some pull, something she could not name, drew her forward. It was magnetic. The moonlight seemed to hum around her, as though urging her to step into the fate waiting beneath it. The gathering was held in a vast clearing, lit by torches and the ethereal glow of the full moon. Alphas, betas, omegas, apprentices, and seers, all were there, their scents mingling in a dizzying symphony. The Alpha himself stood at the center, massive and commanding, his presence parting the crowd like water. She froze when she saw him. He was more imposing than any rumor, his dark eyes scanning the crowd with a predator's precision. Broad shoulders, tall, every movement measured and controlled. The pack's fear of him wasn't a story. She felt it settle in her chest like a weight. But what made her heart stutter wasn't fear. It was curiosity. Something deeper, sharper, tugging at her with invisible threads. He turned slightly, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. And then she caught it. For a heartbeat, his eyes lingered on her. Not because she was loud or bold or dressed to impress. She was none of those things. She was small, quiet, and almost invisible, and yet he looked at her as if she were the only thing that mattered in that clearing. She froze, unsure if he had really seen her or if it was a trick of the moonlight. Then the crowd shifted, and his attention moved elsewhere. But the pull remained. Her Omega senses prickled, a subtle warmth in her chest that told her she had been noticed. She tried to brush it off. It doesn't matter. He couldn't care about someone like me. Still, Arielle could not stop herself from glancing at him again, and again, each time feeling the impossible truth. He had seen her. and somewhere deep beneath his ruthless exterior, a spark had been lit, one that would not be ignored. The moon hung high, full and silver, casting its light on all of them, and for the first time, she felt as though the ashes of her life, the years of hiding, of surviving, might finally be enough. Because tonight, the impossible could happen. Because tonight, the Omega who had always hidden might be seen. And because tonight, a ruthless alpha had unknowingly met the one person who could one day tame him. The clearing buzzed with life. Alphas strode through clusters of Omegas, betas whispered strategies to each other, and apprentices scurried between elders, delivering messages or adjusting ceremonial details. Lanterns flickered, their warm light mingling with the cool silver of the full moon. She stayed near the edge, invisible among the crowd. Every instinct screamed to stay hidden, to shrink into herself and hope the alpha never truly looked her way again. But curiosity, and something sharper, unnameable, pulled her forward. Her stepsisters, decked in silks and furs that gleamed under the moon, moved with practiced grace, weaving past others to catch the alpha's attention. Their smiles were bright, their eyes hungry. She allowed herself a small, careful smile. Let them try. Because she had learned something important from surviving her cruel home. Visibility was dangerous, but subtlety, timing, and cleverness could make even the smallest Omega untouchable. The alpha's presence dominated the clearing. He didn't walk. He commanded. Heads turned as he passed, shoulders straightened, and even the most confident Omegas felt a tremor under his gaze. And then his eyes found her again. She froze, heart pounding. She had been careful, small, quiet. She had thought herself invisible. Yet the alpha, ruthless, feared, unapproachable, looked at her with something she couldn't name: interest, recognition. She quickly averted her gaze, pretending to inspect the hem of her dress, pretending that she didn't notice the way his attention lingered. Don't be foolish. He doesn't care about someone like you. Her stepsisters spotted her glance and tisked. One whispered loudly enough for her to hear. Look at her, still in rags, thinking she belongs here. The words should have stung, but she only smiled inwardly. They didn't see what she had: intelligence, patience, and a quick mind that could turn any situation to her advantage. When an alpha approached to greet her stepsisters, she slipped closer to the edge of the gathering, positioning herself near the full moonlight. She allowed herself a single, small gesture, a tilt of the head, a flicker of curiosity that was easy to miss but impossible to ignore completely. The alpha noticed. Her breath caught. A sudden movement caught everyone's attention. One of the younger apprentices had stumbled, nearly crashing into a beta's ceremonial display. The beta's hand shot out to correct the chaos, but before he could, she stepped in. Careful. Everyone is watching, she said softly, but clearly, her voice carrying just enough for the closest people to hear. She steadied the apprentice with a gentle touch, her movements precise, efficient, calm. The alpha's gaze sharpened. Not because she had saved an apprentice, he had seen dozens do the same that night. No, it was the way she had done it. Quick, quiet, competent, entirely unassuming, yet entirely herself. For a moment, he felt unsettled. Her stepsisters noticed the shift and frowned. They didn't understand. Nothing in their lives had ever gone unnoticed before. But this Omega, the quiet, small one, was already bending the rules of attention without raising her voice, without seeking power. The alpha turned, moving closer to her edge of the clearing. Something unspoken passed through the air between them, sharp and alive. Her chest tightened, a dangerous thrill in her stomach. She couldn't explain it. He was terrifying but magnetic. And for the first time in her life, she realized that hiding completely wasn't always the safest or the most interesting option. The moment was broken by the toll of the ceremonial gong. The gathering fell silent. Every pack member's gaze turned upward toward the full moon, as if the silver light itself demanded attention. And in that quiet, suspended heartbeat, he saw her again. No one else mattered. She was small, quiet, and impossible to overlook all at once. The Alpha's jaw tightened. He had never experienced this before, not with any Omega, not with any creature who had crossed his path. And she, for her part, felt a dangerous thrill. He had seen her, not for what she was supposed to be, but for who she was. Her pulse raced as the moonlight touched her hair, her shoulders, her quiet defiance. She had survived cruelty and neglect, hidden in plain sight. But tonight, everything could change. The gathering did not thin as the night deepened. If anything, the air grew heavier, thick with scent, anticipation, and the silent awareness that under a full moon, destinies could shift without warning. She kept to the edges of the clearing, telling herself she had already risked too much by coming. Her stepmother would be furious if she discovered the truth. Her stepsisters would be worse. But none of that felt as immediate as the weight of his gaze. She felt it before she saw him. A slow, deliberate awareness crept up her spine, raising goosebumps along her arms. The kind of awareness prey felt when a predator had locked onto it. Except she did not feel hunted. She felt noticed. You. His voice was low, controlled, and meant only for her. She turned carefully. He stood a few steps away, massive frame half-bathed in moonlight, shadows cutting sharp lines across his features. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Broad shoulders, dark eyes, a presence that seemed to press against her skin. She lowered her gaze out of habit, but not fully. Just enough to be respectful, not submissive. Yes, Alpha? His eyes narrowed slightly, as if he had expected her to tremble. She did not. I watched you earlier, he said, with the apprentice. Her mind worked quickly. Words were dangerous things, but silence could be misread too. They were about to fall, she replied softly. It was easier to help than to watch. You did it without drawing attention to yourself. A small pause. That is how I survive. Something flickered in his expression. Interest, perhaps, or confusion. Omegas did not speak to him like this. They either fawned or feared. She did neither. He took one step closer. Her heart pounded, but she did not move back. Running would show fear. Standing still showed control. What is your name? He asked. She hesitated. Names carried power. Names made you visible, and being visible had never been safe for her. But his eyes were patient, waiting. She gave it to him. Arielle, softly, the way one might release a secret into the night. He repeated it under his breath, as if testing how it felt on his tongue, as if committing it to memory. And for reasons she did not understand, warmth bloomed in her chest. Around them, the gathering continued, but it felt distant now, muted, like the world had shifted a few steps away, leaving them standing in a quiet pocket of moonlight. You do not act like other Omegas, he said. She allowed herself the smallest hint of a smile. Most Omegas are noticed. I am not. I noticed. The words were simple, matter-of-fact, but they landed with the force of a blow. Her breath caught before she could stop it. No one had ever said that to her before. A breeze shifted through the clearing, carrying her natural scent toward him, no longer dulled by herbs or cloth. She saw the exact moment he registered it. His posture stiffened, his eyes darkened. Something primal moved behind them. He inhaled slowly, deeply, as if trying to understand what he was sensing. She felt it too, a strange pull low in her stomach, warm and unsettling. Not fear, not quite comfort either. Something older, instinctual. His voice dropped lower. Why is your scent unfamiliar to me? I hide it, she admitted before she could stop herself. Why? She met his gaze fully now. Because being noticed is dangerous. Silence stretched between them, and for the first time in many years, she felt the urge to say more, to explain, to be understood. But she swallowed the words. Survival had taught her restraint. He studied her like a puzzle he could not solve, small, quiet, careful. Yet she stood before him without shaking, without begging, without trying to impress him, and it unsettled him more than any challenge ever had. "You are unusual," he murmured. She tilted her head slightly. "Is that a problem, Alpha?" A dangerous question, a bold one. His eyes sharpened, but instead of anger, she saw something else there. Intrigue. "No," he said slowly. "I think it may be the opposite." A distant call pulled his attention briefly, a beta seeking instruction. He did not look away from her immediately, as if reluctant to break whatever invisible thread had formed between them. "I will speak with you again," he said. It was not a request. She nodded once. "If you wish." As he turned to leave, she felt something strange settle in her chest. Not relief, not fear, anticipation. He walked away, but his mind did not. Her scent lingered in his senses. Soft, subtle, different from every Omega he had ever encountered, and beneath his iron control, a single dangerous thought surfaced for the first time. This Omega belongs to me. He did not understand why. He only knew the feeling would not go away. And for the first time in his life, the ruthless Alpha felt the faint, unsettling beginnings of something he could not command. Something the full moon had quietly awakened. By the time she returned home, the moon was already dipping low in the sky. She slipped in through the servants' entrance, heart still racing from everything that had happened. The house was dark and quiet, but she knew better than to relax. Silence here was never peaceful. It was watchful. She had barely removed her shoes when a lamp flared to life. Her stepmother sat at the table, perfectly dressed despite the hour, fingers folded neatly in front of her. Her stepsisters stood behind her like shadows with teeth. "Well," the woman said softly, "you look refreshed." Her stomach dropped. "You went," her stepmother continued. Not a question, a statement. She lowered her gaze. "Yes, mother." One of the stepsisters scoffed. "She thinks she belongs among us now." "Did you speak to anyone?" the stepmother asked calmly. This was the dangerous part. Truth could be used as a weapon. Lies could be uncovered. "I stayed near the edges," she said carefully. "No one noticed me." The stepmother studied her for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then she smiled, a thin, cruel curve of lips. "Good," she said, "because if you embarrassed this family, I would have to correct that misunderstanding." She nodded quietly and was dismissed, but as she climbed the narrow stairs to her small room, she felt something new beneath the familiar weight of fear. Hope. And hope, she knew, was far more dangerous. The next day, whispers ran through the pack like wildfire. The Alpha had been distracted at the gathering. He had spoken to an unknown Omega. He had refused 3 introductions from high-ranking families. Her stepsisters heard it all. "That must be a lie," one snapped. "He would never waste his time on a nobody." Her stepmother's eyes narrowed slightly. "Find out who she is," she ordered. The sisters left in a rush, eager to prove themselves. She stayed behind, quietly polishing the wooden railing, listening without appearing to listen. They don't know, she realized. They had not seen him speak to her. A small, private relief bloomed in her chest. That evening, she went to fetch water from the stream at the edge of the territory. It was a task no one else wanted to do, which made it perfect for her. The forest was calm, the air cool. She knelt by the water, letting the silence settle around her. "You choose quiet places." She startled, nearly dropping the bucket. He stood across the stream as if he had stepped out of the shadows themselves. Her heart began pounding immediately. "Alpha!" she said, standing quickly. He crossed the shallow water without hesitation, boots barely making a sound. Up close, his presence felt even larger here, away from the crowd. "You come here often?" he asked. "Yes." "Why?" She considered the question, then answered honestly. "No one looks for me here." His jaw tightened slightly. That answer displeased him for reasons he did not understand. He stepped closer, too close. She could feel the warmth of him now, the strength in his frame, the quiet intensity in his gaze. "You hide very well," he said. "I had practice." Their eyes met, and for a moment neither spoke. The forest seemed to hold its breath. "You do not fear me," he observed. She thought about that. "I respect you," she said. "Should I be afraid of you?" A strange sound escaped him, almost like a quiet huff of amusement, as if she had surprised him again. "You speak carefully," he said. "I speak truthfully." He studied her for a long moment. "You intrigue me, Arielle," he admitted. Her pulse quickened. "That sounds dangerous." "For you," he agreed. She should have stepped back then, should have reminded herself that this was the Alpha, the most powerful being in the territory. But she didn't, because for the first time in her life, someone powerful was looking at her as if she were worth looking at. "You are not what I expected," he said. "And you are exactly what I expected," she replied softly. His brow lifted. "And what is that?" "Strong," she said, "observant, and lonely." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Silence fell heavily between them. His expression changed. Not anger, but something deeper, something startled. No one spoke to him like this. No one dared to see him. And yet she had. A distant howl echoed through the trees, breaking the moment. He stepped back, eyes never leaving hers. "I will see you again," he said. She nodded. "You know where to find me." As he turned to leave, she felt it again, that strange electric awareness that their paths were no longer separate. And as she watched him disappear into the trees, one thought settled heavily in her mind. She was no longer invisible, and neither of them would be able to pretend otherwise. The peace did not last. It rarely did in a territory ruled by strength. A few days later, she was at the stream when the first warning howl split through the air, long, sharp, and urgent. Not a call, not a greeting, a threat. Her heart leapt into her throat. The bucket slipped from her fingers, water spilling across the stone path as voices rose in alarm around the pack grounds. Rival pack. The words passed from mouth to mouth like fire catching dry grass. She didn't think. She moved. Instinct pulled her toward the main clearing where members were already gathering, some shifting, others grabbing weapons, betas barking orders. And in the center of it all, him. The Alpha stood like a wall between chaos and order, calm, focused, dangerous. His voice cut through the panic with precise commands that steadied everyone around him. Then his eyes found her. Relief flashed across his face so quickly she almost missed it. He crossed the space toward her in long strides. "You should not be here," he said sharply. "I can help," she replied, breathless but steady. His jaw tightened. "You will stay close to me. Do not move unless I tell you." She nodded, and for reasons she couldn't explain, fear melted into something else. Safety. The rival pack did not breach the inner territory, but they tested the borders aggressively. It was a display of dominance, a challenge meant to provoke. She watched the Alpha command his forces with terrifying efficiency. No hesitation, no wasted movement, every order deliberate. But amid it all, he kept glancing at her to ensure she was still there, still safe. At one point, a young apprentice froze in panic near the edge of the commotion. Without thinking, she darted forward and pulled him back behind a tree. "Stay low," she whispered. "Watch. Don't panic." The Alpha saw. He saw everything. Not just her bravery, but her calm. Her ability to think clearly when others could not. When the final howl of retreat echoed through the trees and silence slowly returned, the pack exhaled as one. The threat was gone. But something had changed. He approached her slowly this time. No rush, no urgency, just intensity. "You disobeyed me," he said quietly. She swallowed. "Yes." His eyes searched her face. "Why?" Because someone needed help, she replied, and you were busy protecting everyone else. Something shifted in his expression. Not anger, understanding. You do not think like other Omegas, he said. I do not have the luxury to, she answered. They stood there, the world settling around them, but the space between them charged and alive. He stepped closer, too close. Her breath caught as she felt the heat of him, the sheer size difference, the weight of his presence pressing gently against her senses. I should have sent you home, he murmured. But you didn't, she said softly. His eyes darkened. No, he admitted. A pause. I wanted you where I could see you. Her heart skipped. The admission was quiet, but it landed heavily between them. For the first time since she had known him, she saw something vulnerable flicker across his face. Not weakness, concern, possessiveness, something deeper than authority. You were not afraid, he observed. I was, she said, but fear does not mean you stop moving. He studied her like she was something rare and unfamiliar. And then, before he could stop himself, a thought slipped into his mind with frightening clarity. I want to protect her. I want to touch her and hold her, not because she was weak, but because the world had already tried too hard to break her. He reached out, slowly, carefully, and brushed his fingers against her wrist. The contact was brief, but it sent a shock through both of them. Her breath caught, his hand stilled, their eyes locked. Something ancient stirred under the surface, something instinctive, powerful. The beginning of a bond neither of them had intended. He pulled his hand back as if burned. You should go home, he said, voice rougher now. She nodded, unable to speak, but as she walked away, she felt it, that invisible thread tightening between them. And behind her, the Alpha stood still, staring at the place where she had been, one thought echoing louder than before. He didn't just want to notice her anymore. He wanted to claim her. By morning, the entire territory was buzzing. The rival pack's challenge had failed. The Alpha's control had only strengthened. Stories of his precision, his calm under pressure spread like pride through the wolves. But beneath those stories, quieter whispers moved. He had kept an Omega at his side. No one knew who she was, but everyone had noticed. She tried to make herself smaller that day. She kept her head down, moved quietly through chores, avoided the main paths. But it didn't matter. Eyes followed her now, curious, measuring. Her stepsisters were the first to corner her. You were near the clearing yesterday, one accused. I was delivering water, she said calmly. You think we didn't see the Alpha speaking to you? Her pulse jumped, but her face remained neutral. He was giving orders to everyone. They didn't believe her, and that was dangerous. From the doorway, her stepmother watched the exchange silently, her sharp gaze missing nothing. That afternoon, a beta arrived at the house. Not just any beta, the Alpha's second-in-command, Corvin. The entire household froze. Her stepmother rushed forward with a welcoming smile. To what do we owe this honor? The beta's eyes scanned the room once before landing on her. I bring a message from the Alpha. The air changed. Her stepsisters stared openly now. The beta spoke clearly, formally. The Alpha requests her presence at the pack hall tonight. Silence fell like a stone. Her stepmother blinked. There must be some mistake. She is only... There is no mistake, the beta interrupted. He turned to her. You are to come prepared. The Alpha will be waiting. Then he left. Just like that. The door had barely closed before her stepmother's composure shattered. What did you do? She hissed. Nothing, she answered truthfully. Her stepsisters were already furious. She's lying. She planned this. Her stepmother stepped closer, lowering her voice. Listen to me carefully. You will go. You will be polite. You will not embarrass this family. She nodded, but inside her heart was racing for a completely different reason. He had asked for her, not summoned, requested. Arielle stood in her small room long after sunset, staring at her reflection in the cracked mirror. She owned nothing worthy of a pack hall appearance, nothing elegant, nothing impressive, just simple, worn dresses meant for chores. A knock came at her door. She opened it cautiously. An older Omega stood there, someone she recognized as one of the healers. "I was sent to help you prepare," the woman said kindly. Her eyes widened. "By who?" The healer smiled softly. "The Alpha." What followed felt unreal. The healer brushed out her hair, gently cleaned the dust from her skin, and dressed her in a soft, flowing gown the color of moonlight. Simple, but beautiful. "You do not need ornaments," the healer said. "You already have a great aura." She barely recognized herself. For the first time in her life, she did not look like someone meant to disappear. She looked seen. When she arrived at the pack hall, every head turned, not because of who she was, but because of how she carried herself. Quiet, graceful, unapologetically calm. And at the front of the hall, he stood waiting. He had dismissed the crowd. There was no audience, no spectacle, just him and her. He walked toward her slowly, eyes never leaving her face. "You came," he said. "You asked," she replied. His gaze softened slightly. "I wanted to see you without chaos around us." "You look so different." "I will take it as a compliment. Besides, it's thanks to the lady you sent." She glanced at the empty hall. "This feels important." "It is," he said. He gestured for her to walk with him. They moved through the hall side by side, the moonlight spilling through the high windows. "Everyone was looking at you," he said. "I noticed." "You were not afraid." "I am learning not to be." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "I do not like that they look at you," he admitted. Her heart skipped. "Why?" His voice dropped. "Because they are beginning to realize what I already know." She swallowed. "And what is that, Alpha?" His eyes held hers, intense and unwavering. "That you are no longer invisible." And neither was the bond forming between them. She returned from the pack hall with a heart so full it frightened her. For the first time in her life, she walked through the doorway not feeling small. She had spoken to the Alpha as an equal. He had looked at her as if she mattered. Hope followed her home like a fragile glow. However, it died the moment she stepped inside. Her stepmother was waiting. Not sitting, not calm, waiting. Her stepsisters stood behind her, eyes sharp, alert. Almost excited. "You enjoyed yourself," her stepmother said quietly. It was not a question. She lowered her gaze. "I did nothing wrong." "Oh, I know," the woman replied softly. "That is the problem." A chill slid down her spine. Her stepmother stepped closer, studying her face as if seeing her for the first time. "You don't even realize what you've done, do you?" She swallowed. "No, Mother. You have already taken something that belonged to us." Confusion flickered through her. "I don't understand." Her stepmother's smile did not reach her eyes. "You will." She never saw it coming. One moment she was standing in the hallway. The next, her stepsisters were on either side of her, gripping her arms. Panic surged. "What are you doing?" "Fixing a mistake," one muttered. She struggled, but they were stronger than she expected. They dragged her down the narrow corridor, past the storage rooms to a room at the far back. Her heart began pounding. "Please," she started. The door creaked open to darkness. They pushed her inside. She stumbled, fell hard onto the floor, hit her head, and just like that she passed out. When she came to, it was morning. But not in the same room. She couldn't recognize her surroundings. At first, she didn't understand. She scrambled to the door, hands shaking. "Mother, please, I didn't do anything." Silence. Then her stepmother's voice came through the wood, calm and cold. "You should have stayed invisible." Her breath hitched. "You forgot your place, so now you will remain in it." Footsteps retreated. She was alone, in the dark. She She pounded on the door until her fists hurt. No one came. She called out until her voice cracked. No one answered. Eventually, she slid down against the door and wrapped her arms around herself. Her chest ached, not from fear, from heartbreak. "He must think I didn't come because I didn't want to see him again," she whispered into the darkness. "He must think I stayed away on purpose." Tears spilled freely now. She pressed her forehead to her knees and cried the way she never allowed herself to cry. Quietly at first, then helplessly. "I would never reject you," she whispered. "I would never." But he didn't know that, and that hurt more than the darkness. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. She couldn't tell. There was no light, no sound, no time, just her thoughts turning cruel. He must believe I insulted him. He must believe I ran. He must hate me now. A soft, broken sound escaped her. "I didn't mean to ruin everything," she sobbed. Her voice echoed back at her from the walls. Lonely, small, forgotten. While she cried in the cork, her stepmother was preparing her daughters. "Wear something that flatters you," she instructed. "Be sympathetic. Be convincing." "And what do we say?" one asked. The stepmother's expression hardened. "You tell the alpha she ran away. You tell him she said she would rather be a lone wolf than be with a brute like him. You tell him she used him for attention." The daughters smiled. They were more than willing. That night, they went to the pack hall. They found the alpha exactly where they expected him to be. Waiting. His eyes lifted when they approached, not with interest, with irritation. "Where is she?" he asked immediately. The sisters exchanged a look of false sadness. "She's gone," one said softly. His expression went still. "Gone?" "She said she made a mistake coming here," the other added. "She said she could never be tied to someone like you." Silence fell heavily. "She said," the first continued carefully, "that she would rather be alone than be with a brute who rules by fear." The words hung in the air like poison. Around them, a few betas and members of high-ranking families listened closely. Some nodded, as if this confirmed what they had always believed. An omega could never belong beside the alpha. He did not react. That was the frightening part. His face became unreadable, cold, controlled, dangerous. "Leave," he said quietly. They did, satisfied, certain they had ended it. But as the hall emptied and silence returned, the alpha remained standing in the same spot. Something felt wrong, terribly wrong, because he knew her, and the girl who spoke carefully, who respected him without fear, would never say those words, ever. And for the first time since he had become alpha, unease crept into his chest. The pack hall did not stay empty for long. Word had spread quickly that the omega had run away, that she had insulted the alpha, that she had used his attention and disappeared. By the time the moon rose high enough to silver the windows, the hall was full again. Not with warriors, not with betas on duty, but with daughters of high-ranking families and the betas who supported them. They came dressed beautifully, soft smiles, concerned eyes, voices dripping with sympathy, a performance. He stood near the front of the hall, arms folded behind his back, gaze distant and unreadable. He did not invite them in. They simply gathered anyway. One stepped forward first. "We heard what happened," she said gently. "We are so sorry, Alpha. No one deserves to be spoken to that way." He did not respond. Another came closer. "An omega like that should have known her place." A third laughed softly. "She probably got frightened when she realized the attention was real." Their voices overlapped. "She embarrassed you. She used you. She thought she could climb above her rank." Each word fell like ash into the air. Inside him, something was turning dark, very dark. Because with every insult they threw at her, a memory rose to meet it. Her quiet voice, her careful words, her calm eyes that never mocked, never judged. She would never say those things. Never. and the certainty of that began to burn in his chest. One of the beta girls moved closer than the rest. "You don't need someone like that," she said softly, reaching for his arm. "You deserve someone strong, someone worthy to stand beside you." His head turned slowly toward her. The look in his eyes made her hand freeze mid-air. "Worthy?" The word echoed unpleasantly in his mind. "She was not worthy," another girl added. "She should be grateful you even noticed her." That was when his control began to crack. "Enough!" The word was quiet, but it landed like a strike. They fell silent. His gaze swept across all of them, cold and dangerous. "You speak as if you knew her." No one answered. "You speak as if you understand her." Still silence. "You speak," he continued, voice lowering, "as if you were there when she spoke to me." A chill ran through the room, because they hadn't been, and suddenly they realized that. "She would never say those things," he said, not loudly, not angrily, with certainty, the kind of certainty that made their stomachs twist. One of the girls tried to recover. "Alpha, we are only trying to comfort you." "I did not ask for comfort." His voice sharpened like a blade. "I did not ask for opinions." He took a step forward, and several of them instinctively stepped back. "I asked for her." Silence swallowed the hall. The beta girl tried again, desperate now. "She rejected you. Why defend her?" His eyes snapped to hers. Rage flashed so suddenly it stole the air from her lungs. "Leave," he said. No one moved. "Leave now." This time, his voice carried the authority of a command no wolf could ignore. They rushed for the doors, dresses brushing the floor, whispers turning into frightened murmurs. Within seconds, the hall was empty. He remained standing there, chest rising and falling slowly, the anger still coiled tightly inside him. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. He could feel it now, deep in his bones. This was not rejection. This was not denial. Something was terribly wrong, and he had wasted time listening to useless things. He turned and walked toward his private quarters, but he did not make it there alone. Soft footsteps followed behind him. He stopped abruptly. "Do not follow me," he said without turning. The beta girl from before stood a few steps back, nervous but determined. "I only wanted to help you forget her," she said quietly. His hands curled into fists. "I do not want to forget her." She took another step. That was a mistake. He turned so quickly she gasped. The air shifted violently as his presence pressed down on her like a storm. For a brief, terrifying second, she realized just how close she had come to provoking something dangerous. "Go," he said, voice low and shaking with restrained fury. She fled without another word. He stood alone in the corridor long after she disappeared. His anger slowly drained, replaced by something far worse, a feeling he could no longer ignore. She had not left him. She was missing. And suddenly he knew. He had been listening to lies. The night was unusually still. The moon hung high and heavy, silvering the pack hall with cold light. Darian paced, slow and deliberate, his boots echoing on the stone floors. The hall had been emptied of the jealous girls, the scheming betas, the high-ranking families. Yet the air felt heavier now, thicker, charged. Something was wrong. He clenched his fists. Every nerve in his body screamed that this was no ordinary absence. Arielle should have been here. She had visited the pack hall, spoken to him quietly, looked at him as if the world were hers to command, and then nothing. No message, no word, no sign. And yet he could feel it in the back of his mind, in the depth of his instincts. Something was wrong. He went to the windows, letting the cool night air brush his face. The scents of the territory were muted tonight, but he sniffed anyway. Her scent. It should have been faint, lingering from the hall, but it was gone. Every instinct in him roared. She had not left willingly. His jaw tightened. "No," he whispered. "She would never leave like this." Corvin, his advisor, appeared quietly at the doorway. "Alpha, the girl's claims she left?" Darian's eyes narrowed, cold and sharp. "They lie," he said, voice low, deadly. "They always lie." He strode from the hall, boots pounding, heart hammering. He could almost feel the empty space where she should be, hear the faintest echo of her voice in the corners of the room. "She's missing," he said aloud, though no one else was near. "And if she is hurt," his voice dropped to a growl, "there will be consequences." The world outside the pack hall had never seemed so quiet. Every shadow, every rustle of leaves, every distant howl made him pause and listen. His mind raced, calculating where she could be, what had been done, who had dared touch her. He stopped abruptly at the edge of the territory. The scent trail here was faint, almost erased, but he caught it. A fragment, small, hidden, but undeniably hers. "She didn't leave," he muttered. "She couldn't leave." He took a deep breath and made a decision. No guards, no betas, no protocol. He would find her himself, because whoever had trapped her, whoever had spread their lies, would soon learn that no one defied Darian and no one touched Arielle without consequence. And in the silence of the night, one thought repeated in his mind. "They think she abandoned me. They are wrong. And when I find her—" His eyes burned with a fire no one had ever seen before. "They will regret every word they spoke about her." Arielle huddled in the dark, the cold stone floor pressing against her cheek. Every part of her body ached, not from the floor, not from hunger, but from the crushing weight of being unseen, unheard, and forgotten. She pressed her trembling hands against her face, trying to stop the tears, but they flowed anyway. "Darian," she whispered into the emptiness. Her voice was barely audible, a fragile thread of sound. "Please, please care enough to find me," the words caught in her throat. She had never dared to speak them aloud before, not in front of anyone, not even in her own thoughts. And now, alone in the darkness, she let them fall freely. "You know I didn't leave willingly. You know I wouldn't. Her voice broke, a sob strangling the sentence. "I hope you love me enough not to believe their lies. Please, Darian, please." The silence answered her, but in the quiet, she clung to the faintest flicker of hope that he would come, that he would care, that he would find her before the lies swallowed her entirely. Meanwhile, Darian stood at the stream where he and Arielle had first met in the early light of spring. This was their spot, the one where she had laughed quietly when he had teased her about chasing butterflies, where she had listened to his stories without fear, where he had first noticed her courage. He inhaled sharply, scanning the surrounding forest, following the faint trail of scents that the night had not yet claimed. And then, a hint. Arielle. Not strong, not fully present, but faint, fragile. Her scent teased his senses, almost gone, fading like smoke in the wind. "By the gods," he muttered, his chest tightening. "She's still here, but she's fading. I have to find her." His boots struck the ground with a pounding rhythm, every step deliberate, every sense stretched to its limit. The world narrowed to one thing. Arielle, alive, frightened, needing him. Back in the room, Arielle pressed her hands to her ears, trying to block out the thought of Velara's lies, the stepsisters' whispers, the cruel faces of the pack that had turned against her. She closed her eyes, imagining Darian, imagining him seeing through the falsehoods, imagining him coming for her. A single, silent cry escaped her lips. "Darian, I hope you come. I hope you care. I hope—" She collapsed forward, her forehead on the cold stone, and the quiet desperation of her heart filled the empty room. Darian moved through the territory like a storm, following the thread of her scent with a precision that terrified even the most seasoned betas. He traced it to the edge of the forest near the outskirts of the pack grounds, where the air hung heavy with her fear, mingled with dust and despair. "She is close," he growled, nostrils flaring, claws scraping against stone. "She's here somewhere, and whoever did this will pay." The scent flickered again, weaker now, almost gone. "Hold on, Arielle," he whispered into the wind, voice rough and raw. "Hold on, I'm coming. I will not fail you." Every step carried urgency. Every sense screamed that time was against him. The alpha who ruled with a cold, measured hand now moved with a desperate, singular purpose to find her before the darkness claimed her. Finally, he arrived at the small, hidden room Velara had chosen, its door locked and solid. The faint scent of Arielle seeped through the cracks. His chest heaved as he slammed against it, first with his fists, then with the force of his entire body. The door splintered. There she was, collapsed, trembling, utterly broken in the dark. "Arielle," he breathed, dropping to his knees beside her, his hands trembling as he reached for her. She lifted her head slightly, eyes wide, red-rimmed, and she whispered his name like a prayer. "Darian." His hands cupped her face, brushing the hair from her tear-streaked cheeks. "Shh, it's okay. I'm here. I found you." Her sobs hit him like a wave, and he held her tight, feeling the fragile weight of her despair, the loneliness she had endured, the fear that had gripped her soul. I thought you would hate me," she murmured. "Never," he growled, voice low and trembling. "I would never hate you, Arielle. You could never do that. You could never betray me." She clung to him, burying her face in his chest, her tears soaking into the fabric of his shirt. Every silent cry she had whispered into the darkness, every prayer she had made for him to come, he heard it all. And now he would never let her go. He lifted her into his arms, holding her close, letting her feel the warmth and strength that only he could provide. "They lied," he whispered, voice tight with anger. "They said you abandoned me, that you rejected me. And I believed none of it. I know you, Arielle. I know your heart, and I will never let anyone harm you again." Her tears fell freely, but now they were mingled with relief. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she felt seen, protected, loved. He carried her through the night, every step deliberate, every muscle tense with the promise that no one would ever control her again. And as the first silver light of dawn touched the forest, Arielle knew, finally, that she had been found, and Darian would never let her fade again. Darian barreled through the forest like a storm given flesh, every instinct screaming that Arielle was close. The faintest wisp of her scent hit him near the stream, their favorite spot, and it set his blood on fire. She was here. She had not left him. But she was fading, too weak, too fragile. "No," he growled, teeth bared, claws flexing in the dirt. "No, I will not let this happen to you." He followed the scent, faster and faster, until he burst into the small, hidden room Velara had prepared. And then he saw her, Arielle, bound, bruised, pale, shivering, her body trembling with exhaustion and pain. Something inside him snapped. A roar erupted from him, a sound so deep, so primal it rattled the walls, shook the forest, and carried across the pack territory. Every warrior, every beta, every far-off member dropped to their knees, ears pressed to the ground, hearts hammering in fear. Even the trees seemed to shiver under the weight of his fury. "Who did this to you? Who dared touch you? Who has the guts to defy me?" Claws dug into the floor, teeth clenched, eyes burning with pure white-hot rage. No one could calm him. Not the betas kneeling in terror, not the murmurs of high-ranking families. Only the sight of Arielle, trembling and fragile, made him hesitate, just slightly. Corvin, his advisor, stood calmly beside him, silent and steady, the only presence not bowing in fear. His voice was firm, yet careful. "Darian," he said, placing a hand lightly on his shoulder. "She's here. She's alive. Calm yourself. You're scaring her too. She's still in pain. She's afraid. Let's not make it worse." Darian's chest heaved, every muscle taut, But he glanced down at her pale face, at the tears streaking her cheeks, at her trembling hands, and the heat of his fury met the heat of his love, and something shifted. He dropped to his knees beside her, ripping the ropes from her wrists with brutal speed, brushing away the dirt and tears as he held her face in his hands. "Arielle." His voice was ragged, searing, every syllable trembling with anger. "Tell me, who did this to you? Who has the audacity to hurt you, to defy me?" She shivered in his arms, pain still etched into every movement, tears streaming freely. Her lips parted, but no words came. The sheer terror and exhaustion made it impossible. Corvin's voice cut in again, calm but firm. "Darian, she can't answer yet. She's too weak. We have found her, and she will be all right. Let her rest, and let's deal with the others later. The first suspects are obvious, her stepmother and sisters. Send a captain to arrest them immediately. They will face judgment when she regains consciousness." Darian's eyes flared. He wanted to shred them where they stood, to make them feel every ounce of his rage. But now was not the time. He would have justice later. Right now she needed him. Gently, though still trembling with barely contained fury, he lifted her into his arms. Every step back to his room was measured, careful, as if even the ground might harm her. Once inside, he laid her on his bed, refusing to leave her side. His hand never left hers. Every time she stirred, murmured, or whimpered in her sleep, he held her tighter, brushed her hair from her face, whispered soft reassurances. All night long, he stayed. Every nightmare she experienced, every shiver of fear or pain he soothed. His voice was low and commanding, yet tender. His presence alone was her shield, and slowly, as the hours passed, Arielle began to drift in and out of sleep, leaning on the warmth of him, the certainty of safety. Darian never closed his eyes fully. Every breath, every tiny movement she made, he monitored. Every tear she shed, he caught before it could stain her skin. His fury had not disappeared. It simmered, quiet now, a promise to anyone who dared cross her that he would unleash it fully when the time came. When dawn finally broke, spilling soft gold light into the room, Arielle woke. She blinked against it, still nestled in his arms, the weight of her terror and exhaustion melting against the warmth and safety of his embrace. For the first time since Velara's cruelty had touched her life, she felt at peace. The world, the lies, the betrayal, all of it seemed to have lifted, replaced by one simple, undeniable truth. She was safe, and she was loved. Darian's gaze softened as he saw her awake, hand still clutching hers. "You're safe now," he whispered. "I've got you. No one will ever hurt you again." Arielle exhaled, finally letting go of the tension she had carried for so long. The weight of the world had shifted from her shoulders, and for the first time, she could truly rest, knowing she was in the arms of the only person who would ever protect her completely. By afternoon, Arielle could sit up without the room spinning. The healer stayed close, her hand warm and steady in Arielle's as they slowly made their way toward the great hall. Word had already spread. The Alpha had found his Omega, and the Alpha was furious. The entire pack filled the hall in tense silence. Warriors lined the walls, Betas stood stiffly. No one spoke above a whisper. The air itself felt dangerous. At the center stood Velara, Liora, and Seren. Bound, pale, trembling. They had not yet seen Darian. He stood at the far end of the hall like a storm waiting to break, eyes dark, jaw tight, chest rising and falling with controlled, violent breaths. Corvin stood beside him, watchful. The moment the three women were pushed forward, Darian's control shattered. In 3 long strides, he crossed the hall. Gasps erupted. Before anyone could react, his hand was at Velara's throat, lifting her off the ground as if she weighed nothing. His eyes burned with a rage so pure it made warriors avert their gaze. "You dared," he said, voice low and shaking with fury, "to touch what is mine." People began pleading. "Alpha, please, show mercy." But Darian did not hear them. Velara clawed at his wrist, choking, eyes wide with terror. And then The hall doors opened. Arielle stepped inside, leaning heavily on the healer. The moment Darian saw her, everything changed. He released Velara instantly. She fell hard against the wall and crumpled to the floor, crying out in pain. But Darian was already moving toward Arielle. He reached her in seconds, taking her hand carefully, guiding her to a seat as if she were made of glass. His voice, moments ago filled with wrath, dropped into something rough and protective.
"You shouldn't be standing. You need rest."
Arielle's fingers trembled in his as she gently rubbed the back of his hand. "Please," she whispered. "Calm down." But Darian's chest still heaved. His eyes lifted toward the sisters, and the fury returned like fire catching dry leaves.
"They should feel what you felt,"
he said, voice shaking. "They should know fear. They should know pain. Guards!" The warriors stepped forward instantly. "Seize them!" Liora and Seren screamed as they were grabbed. "For what they have done," Darian continued, his voice echoing through the hall, "they will learn what it means to challenge me. Everyone in this pack knew how I regard Arielle. Harming her is not a mistake. It is defiance. It is a direct challenge to my authority." His gaze swept across the hall. "Let this be a lesson. You do not touch my queen unless you are prepared to stand before me and face my wrath." At that moment, Arielle tried to slide from her chair. She moved as if to kneel. Darian turned so quickly it startled everyone. He dropped beside her before her knees touched the floor and held her shoulders.
"No,"
he said firmly.
"Never kneel for people who do not deserve it."
He helped her sit back down, still holding her hands.
"I will calm myself," he promised her quietly, "but I will not let this go unanswered."
He turned back to the three women.
"Arielle,"
he said, voice still heavy with anger,
"you do not want them killed, so you will choose their punishment."
The entire hall went silent. Arielle swallowed, her voice small but steady. "They will remain in the pack," she said. "They will keep their house. They will live among us. But as servants, working the fields, cleaning, doing every task that must be done for the Alpha's home and the pack. Or they may leave, banished forever." Velara stared in horror. To live seen every day, to be known, to be reduced to the lowest work in the very pack where they once held pride. It was worse than exile. We choose to stay," Velara whispered hoarsely. Darian's jaw tightened.
"So be it."
He looked at the guards.
"Remove them.
Their new lives begin today." As they were dragged away, the hall remained silent. No one would ever forget what they had witnessed. Not the Alpha's rage, not the Omega's mercy, and not the undeniable truth now burned into every heart in that room. Arielle was no longer invisible. She was untouchable. The evening was calm. The sun dipped low behind the mountains, casting long golden shadows across the pack territory. The hall was quiet now. The aftermath of the day's punishments and judgments settled like dust on old stone. Darian stood near the window, looking out over the forest, arms crossed, chest heavy with emotion. He had found her, protected her, and now he wanted more. Something he had been holding back, waiting for the right moment, the right words. Arielle approached, slow and careful, leaning lightly on the healer's steady arm. Her eyes, soft and trusting, met his. "Darian," she said, her voice small. He turned, and in that moment, every ounce of his fury, every protective instinct, softened into something deeper, warmer.
"Arielle,"
he said, stepping closer.
"We both know what this is and what we've had, but I want to say it properly."
Her brows lifted, curiosity flickering across her face.
He swallowed. "I want to ask you, will you be mine? Formally. Not because we've been together in secret or because we cannot live without each other, but because I want the pack and the world to know. Will you be my mate?"
Arielle's heart skipped. She had known it already. They had been together in every unspoken moment, every shared glance, every fleeting touch.
but hearing it spoken aloud made her chest swell. "Yes," she whispered, smiling. "Yes, Darian." They spent the night together in quiet conversation. Words that had been trapped for weeks, months, spilled out in soft laughter and gentle teasing. At last, he gathered the courage, leaned closer, and kissed her. Arielle froze for a moment, unsure, a little overwhelmed. "I've never done this before," she admitted, cheeks flushing. Darian's hands cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheek. "Then we will do it together," he murmured. "Gently. It will come naturally. I'll guide you. No rush, no pressure." She chuckled softly. "You've wanted this since the first day you saw me, haven't you?" "Yes," he admitted, a rare, shy smile crossing his features. "I've waited, to be sure you felt the same. I did not want to force this on you." She blinked, then laughed. "A month ago. And you didn't say anything? We've been meeting regularly since then." "I am a patient man in love," he said, voice teasing but soft. "And now, we are together, fully." The night unfolded gently, filled with closeness, laughter, and the shared warmth of two souls finally free to love one another. By the time the first light of dawn kissed the windows, Arielle lay resting in his arms, heart calm, safe, and cherished. A few days later, a feast was held in the great hall to celebrate their union. The pack gathered, warriors, betas, and even distant families. The high priest stepped forward, divining the bond. "The gods bless this union," he announced, voice echoing across the hall. "She will bring fortune, prosperity, and strength to this pack. Their bond is sacred, and it is protected." Cheers erupted. Arielle, once a quiet, resilient Omega, now stood fully recognized, embraced, and accepted. Darian's hand brushed hers, a silent promise of protection, love, and devotion. The pack cheered for the new Alpha and Omega, and finally, Arielle felt it. The weight of the world lifted from her shoulders. She was no longer alone. She was loved. She was powerful. And in the warmth of the hall, under the gaze of the gods and her pack, she smiled. They lived at last happily ever after. If you love Alpha and Luna stories, Alpha-Omega romance, billionaire romance, and destined love stories that keep you listening late into the night, then you're in the right place. Stories filled with jealousy, betrayal, passion, and powerful love. Ruthless alphas who would burn the world for their mate. Soft but strong heroines who change everything. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more binge-worthy fantasy audiobooks. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. Welcome to your new obsession.